Hi, yes, I have to get to the right page here. Tonight's video, I have some notes for, and I have some extemporaneous stuff I just want to do, but, and I have my laptop here open with some notes as well, but I just kind of want to talk without really thinking too much about like a script or where it's going, more just a subject and sort of, keeping a list of a few points I want to be sure I don't miss. So the idea for this video came about because I was actually working on the premise for another video, and it occurred to me, as I'm sure it has occurred to lots of people, that we're all thousands and thousands of us making videos, spending time making videos, putting the videos out there, and we're doing it assuming that we are speaking to our contemporaries, which is a very limited slice of who our actual viewing audience will be, because these videos are going to exist long after we're dead. So speaking sort of in the now is just, it's targeting just a narrow subset of viewers and listeners. Really, it would make more sense empirically to speak to the space of time. I mean, let's say YouTube, who knows? How long is YouTube going to be around? Let's say it's around for 5,000 years. If it's around for 5,000 years, and I live an average human lifetime, that's still, something like 99% of the time that the video that I'm making right now is viewable will be when I'm already dead. So, I know videos get more views in their first week, but even taking that into account, I think it's impossible to know the future of how long, what is the life of this video. Like I'm gonna upload it, post it. How long is it going to stick around before either YouTube gets into this, eventually, might get into this phase where it's just like, we're sunsetting videos that get fewer than this number of views per month, just for, storage reasons. But of course, if you kind of follow Moore's law and you are thinking about storage becoming less and less of an issue, maybe that doesn't happen, or maybe they get downgraded instead of deleted. 100 years from now, what is 35 megabits a second? Right, that's going to be nothing. So maybe that's not going to happen. But the point is, we don't know, right? But I think the safe assumption, let's give it 5,000 years, and if we give it 5,000 years, then I'm the super likely scenario to anyone listening to this right now is I've been dead for 4,000 of those years, 4,900 of those years. So I wanted to make one video that I kind of predicate on that truth, because obviously I don't want to do it for all videos. That would be silly. But I want to do one, and I would kindly ask my chronological contemporaries to not watch this video, because there's not going to be anything in it for you. I'm speaking to future people. So if you heard through some, I don't know how you would have heard, or if you were interested enough to subscribe to my channel, which, by the way, if you haven't, can do it now. That would be great. I would love that. I'm so bad at selling the idea of subscribing to my channel. But anyway, so if you care enough to subscribe, maybe you will be like, oh, he stopped making videos. That's weird. Did he just lose interest? And then do an obituary search or something and find out that I'm dead. I share a name with not a super famous person, but a kind of famous person. So it might be a little difficult. Once you untangle that, see if it's me that's dead or this semi-famous person, then not that I'm not. This person's much more famous than I am, but he's still only semi-famous. So once you determine I'm alive or dead, if I'm dead, come back, watch the video. Until then, I'll give you all a moment to stop watching. All right, I'm going to do a quick imitation. Who am I? All right, so now if you're watching this video, I'm going to assume that I'm dead. And that sucks. Thinking about it right now as I'm recording it, that sucks. It's an unappealing thought to probably anyone, obviously, who's alive. Probably not so much for you, the person watching this, because you most likely didn't know me. By a lot of accounts, I wasn't a great person anyway, at least not that enjoyable to be around. So, yeah, you can just read the comments on my last video, get some insight there. But if you're a family member of mine, or you're someone who loved me, please know that I loved you too, and death can't change that. That sounds trite to say death cannot change the fact that I love you. But I don't think it's trite, and I do think it's true. Death can't change the fact that I love you. It just prevents me from expressing it to you in your present tense. So here I am in my present tense, telling you now that I love you. So my subsequent death doesn't make any difference to that fact. I just can't be there to reassure you about it over and over again. So you're going to have to either rewatch this video or just take me at my word. And if you're one of my kids, ask a family member about the secret videos that I've left behind. Because I want you to watch them all. And there are, a lot of things to say about your lives, and I'm very prescriptive about what you should be doing and how you should be spending your lives. And, so watch the videos or the plan won't work. And don't bother asking about the plan, because if you're not a family member, can't tell you about the plan. But we're going to mess some stuff up. Okay, the people who hated me. So the people who hated me. So if you hated me, or if you wished me ill, and now I'm dead, and you think that, well, you're alive, so somehow you've won something. It's not the case. I mean, if I'm dead, I'm not, you don't matter to me at all. Nothing matters to me at all. But the fact that you're watching this means that I matter to you in some way. So the fact that I matter to you when you don't matter to me kind of means that I win that exchange. But go ahead and be glib about the fact that you're still alive, because you don't know what's coming next, and I do. In my opinion, what's coming next is nothing. But I don't know that as for a fact yet. I mean, the vast majority of people who are watching this, I'm not going to have any truck either way. They don't care. I don't give a flip. I'm hoping that that's something I can change by the end of this video. But I'm hyper aware of the fact that this video is very much a message in a bottle thrown into a stormy sea. So all I can do is just, cross my fingers and hope. Maybe here, this is one of my last wishes is that when I die, my fingers are wired together like this until rigor sets in, and then you can take off the wire, and then I would be buried or cremated or whatever. Haven't actually made that choice yet, with my fingers crossed. I don't know if that's actually possible. You go check out Ask a Mortician, her channel. Maybe she would know. So one of the things, there's a few things I wanted to talk about in this context. One of the things I wanted to talk about was things that I'm definitely unhappy about, that death makes me unhappy about. And one of those things is kind of not knowing how a lot of events are going to unfold that I would like to see. Everybody has interests and things that they're vested in, and things whose outcome they're vested in. From something as simple as a football game, to a political election, to a certain path that a civilization might take or society might take. So I have a lot of those things. We all do. So that's kind of one of the things that gets to me, is that I'm not going to see how a lot of those things end up. I mean, presumably I'll be around to see Trump die, and that'll be a good day. Unless he dies in a nuclear holocaust that he precipitates with a tweet and kills us all. That sounds far-fetched, but Donald Trump being elected president also sounded far-fetched at one point in time. So I really do think we all need to be prepared to deal with the consequences of our most bizarre imaginings. And that's the sort of future events, sort of unforeseeable future events that I'm talking about. I mean, can you imagine, do you think Jack Dorsey or Evan Williams ever in a million years thought that they would have a U.S. president improvising policy and jeopardizing international affairs using their platform? They didn't. Even now they say, like, oh, yeah, sure, I could have seen that happen. They didn't see that happening. Twitter was dying a few years ago. It was well on its way out in 2013. Trump sucks, but he probably deserves a little payola from the folks at Twitter for almost single-handedly reviving their platform. Credit where credit is due. And I'm not going to talk about Trump anymore for the rest of this video. So you can breathe a sigh of relief. You can put the comment down there about me being a liberal leftist cuck or whatever. But I won't be talking about Trump anymore for this video, because I'm talking about the future. So obviously when I'm talking about the events that I have a vested interest in, there are some very selfish ones, right? Like how I die. But that's like a weird one, because I wouldn't really want to live my entire life knowing, I put a qualifier there. I wouldn't want to live my life knowing how I was going to die for the entire period while I'm alive. Like if I were allowed the latitude to sort of create this best case imaginary construct of how I would like it to work, I would like to live my natural life, die, then be resurrected like for 10 seconds where someone just tells me how I died. And then like not long enough for me to get my bearings and be like, wait, don't put me back under. Or just long enough to let me know. And then before I've gotten sort of readjusted to being alive, I'll be gone again already. And so I'll only know it for 10 seconds. But that doesn't matter. What matters is it would reassure me now to have that situation then, It doesn't matter that I actually only possess the knowledge for 10 seconds, and that's ridiculous. Who, what does it matter at that point? It matters to me now. Yeah, I couldn't be more ambivalent about it. I don't want to live with the knowledge, but somehow I still want to know it. But I do have a few guesses in order of likelihood. 1, heart attack. 2, stroke. 3, embolism. 4, car crash. 5, self-immolation. That's it. I just put the top 5. I should probably put cancer on there. It's just as likely, if not more likely, than several of those. But the thing is, and I know this is ridiculously naive on my part, but I don't fear cancer like I fear these lightning strike deaths that can come out of nowhere in an instant. There's a phrase that Stephen King uses in a few of his novels. Usually he uses it to, like, in one sentence, do away with a husband or a wife that died. And the widower is a character, or the widow is a character in the book, but the deceased spouse is not. He's used this phrase a few times. He will say that the partner died of a thunderclap heart attack. And that is a terrifying phrase. I don't know why. I do know why, but there's lots of ways to describe, a major cardiac event that ends up being fatal. But for some reason, thunderclap heart attack, it has like very aggressive consonants in it, and it's just a very effective turn of phrase. And so for cancer, at least in most cases, you get some warning, and there's a lot of people who would say, well, that's exactly why I don't want to get cancers. I don't want to live the last couple of months of my life knowing how I'm going to die, and knowing that it's going to be this decline, and having to make these very difficult choices. And that's a good point. And I think about that a lot. But I think my point is that my counterpoint is like just living for the day-to-day, from day to day, not currently diagnosed with cancer, which is of course not the same as saying I don't have cancer, because who knows? I guess what I'm saying is I don't drive down the street and fear that I'm going to drop dead of cancer at a stoplight, or if I have plans for this weekend, I don't fear that I'm going to die of cancer on a weekend getaway, And I realize there are cases where that can happen, but it's not a fear that I have. There's a solace there. There's like a process that I take some solace in knowing that the process exists. Once the sentence is handed down, I'd probably be very upset and wouldn't want it, and would curse myself for wanting it. And there's a strange irony at work there too, because I'm a hypochondriac, but most likely I'm a hypochondriac about the wrong thing. So I'm probably spending all this mental time and effort and anguish focused on one or two possible points of failure, when the true invader, the true ultimate cause of my demise might be, just a couple of inches to the right, one organ down. So who knows? I'm sure I'm missing the disaster looming somewhere. So since I'm speaking to future people here, please take a moment. When you did your research about whether I was dead or not, I assume it listed my cause of death. And if it ended up being cancer, please, give yourself a relish in my hubris. Um, if I died of a heart attack, you can say, "Oh, well, he got it right." He actually predicted his own death. Although I'm sure most bookies would happily play those odds, but it really doesn't matter. Dead is dead. One quirk about me, I say it's a quirk about me, but it's probably more common than I realize. And it's kind of similar to how my hypochondriasis is most likely misguided. Is that I have like strange fears. I fear the wrong things, meaning I'm not only afraid of things I shouldn't be afraid of, but I'm not afraid of things that I should be afraid of. When I hear people talking about the things they're afraid of, and I think about the things that I'm afraid of, there's not a lot of overlap there. Obviously, there's some basic overlap. Most people have the same really basic fears, but once you get beyond that, the Venn diagram doesn't do much overlapping, and the fears that I have are usually not, by comparison, rational. That can make my choices in certain situations dangerous for me and possibly dangerous for those around me, which I realize that's something I need to keep my guard up about and keep a lid on. For instance, right, I don't fly. I could fly, but I choose not to fly because I'm an adult and I can do that. But it's not because I'm afraid of heights, and it's not even that I'm empirically afraid of the plane crashing. I'd be fine. I'd be fine getting in a helicopter. I'd be fine getting in like a small prop plane where it's just me and a decent pilot. I'd be fine getting in a hot air balloon. And I know a commercial airline is safer than all of those things. The fear comes from sort of the trappings that surround commercial flight. From the moment you get to the airport, kind of being herded through security, all this waiting for boarding, the process of boarding itself, even once you're boarded, there's too many people, you're too stuffed in, it's claustrophobic, and the pilot is like this mythical sort of removed from you entity at the head of the plane, and once the plane takes off, you've surrendered yourself to this person who you only know their name, and for 6 to 12 to 18 hours, whatever it is, your life is in their hands, and there's no hitting the pause button. There's no stopping the car for a minute and saying, "Look, I just need a couple minutes, then we can get back in and get going again." Even thinking about it now is making me anxious, so I'm gonna move on. It's clear to everyone who knows me that I have issues surrounding control and the loss of control. Another interesting consequence of my preoccupation with death coming from within is that it's somewhat blinded me to the notion of death coming from without. Things like I don't wear a seatbelt because it makes me feel confined. Stupid. I have a tendency to want to provoke people, specifically who are in positions of authority over me. And that's based on a sort of persecution complex that I have. I'm lucky it hasn't gotten me into more trouble than it has. So I have these weird reactions and these weird fears, and also, things like I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm not afraid of snakes. I'm not afraid of living in dangerous neighborhoods where I'm potentially a target or stuff like that. And it's not bravery, it's an obsessive thought loop about these other avenues by which death can strike. It's like there's only so much that a person can worry about simultaneously, and you focus on, or at least for me, like I focus on, not intentionally, but I will end up focusing on these things that don't make a lot of sense, and maybe to the point where I won't even realize that I'm in a situation that might have been dangerous until it's over, and somebody tells me. So it's weird. I'm scared of some of the most inane things, almost to the point of paralysis. Like, it takes every ounce of courage I have to go to a party where I don't know anybody, or even a party where I know like a few people. So yeah, chalk that up to I have a lot of issues. Social anxiety, fear of losing control, claustrophobia. I always need a way out. I always need an escape route. I always feel trapped. I have a persecution complex. I have anger issues. And I have a fear of unpredictable and suddenly fatal organ failures. So a lot of those fears might be assuaged by knowing the future. But as it is, it's been difficult to navigate life that way. And I mean, difficult is a relative term here, You develop coping mechanisms, and I've developed several and become very good at them. I'm excellent to the point of it being a problem at compartmentalization. Another thing I'm good at is exclusionary thinking, which is kind of like compartmentalization. But I've noticed that, like, as I've gotten older, I haven't been as good at that. It's almost been an inversion of exclusionary thinking. So when I was really young, when death from certain avenues was very, very unlikely, I convinced myself, being a hypochondriac, that I was going to be the statistical anomaly, that I was going to be the 18-year-old who dropped dead from a stroke in civics class. Is that showing my age? Civics class? Is there still civics class? I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, now one of my coping mechanisms is the inverse of that. With every day and every year that passes, the statistics become less and less on my side. But I'm still rationalizing, I still rationalize away that fear by thinking of myself as the statistical exception. Except now, I'm the exception that lives in the face of these scenarios. But it comes from the same place. It's the, I'm going to be different. When I was young, I'm going to be different. I'm going to die when nobody is dying. And now I feel like, no, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be the one who survives when other people die from this thing. They're both bonkers ideas. I talked about this a little bit in the video about death a couple of videos ago, but I do a similar kind of distancing whenever someone famous dies. My immediate reaction is to sort of find something about their circumstances that they did that was, scientifically labeled wrong, or find some reason, even if, ultimately maybe that reason, maybe that thing that I see and latch onto as, well, they died because they did this, maybe not. But like I said, it's a coping mechanism. I'll find the thing they did, they they did drugs, they could be smoking, lack of exercise. Although I don't really exercise, but again, then I rationalize, well, I'll do the other things. I'll eat healthier, and with the exception of Coke, which I'm telling you, if Coke kills me, I don't know. If someone told me today that, look, you got to stop drinking Coke, it's going to shave 3.5 years off your life. 3.5 years? No, I'd probably do it. I'd probably be able to give it up. But if they said like 6 months, I don't think that'd be enough. So maybe in your future time, the future yous who are watching this, the way that I died is archaic to you, like polio is to me. And if you have the same kind of issues I do, which I assume, our general fears and hopes and dreams don't change that much over the next few thousand years, you can distance yourself from me using the same way that I distance myself from, the sort of recent just a landslide of deaths from fentanyl, and fentanyl patches. It's a shame how many artists that particularly nefarious drug and method of delivery, i.e. the patch, the number of artists that is taken away from us. Anyway, maybe in the future you live a lot longer than we do. The average lifespan has sort of ticked up, more or less linear fashion as time marches on. But I expect there's a limit to that, or maybe there'll be a breakthrough and there'll be a huge, giant leap forward. Who knows? But one thing I'm fairly confident about is that if you're watching this, no matter when you're watching this, you're gonna die. Maybe you'll live significantly longer than we did in my time, and that's great for you, but it's still gonna happen. At some point, diminishing returns on the amount of life that you have. Okay, so focusing a lot on me, and I want to be sure that I have time to talk about the future that I am at this moment sort of virtually in, with you who are, to me, the yet to be borns, and you're listening to me talk, and maybe even the way that I'm speaking is sort of strange and funny to you, and maybe the way that I think might be very odd. I am a product of my upbringing and my circumstances and surroundings, so who knows? But this is it's like a time capsule, and time capsules only work one way, which is a shame. Be great. Can you imagine you discover time capsules from the future? Like maybe there wasn't a way for biological things to time travel, but we could send, and then we'd just be chatting with people from the future. It would be weird. Chatting with your own progeny, descendants, and who knows? It'd be very strange, but the questions that come to mind are like, where are you in the distant future watching this? According to many dystopian futurist novels, you're in some sort of cubicle room with augmented reality screens covering every surface to make it seem like you could be wherever you want to be. But maybe you're just in a bathroom watching this. Maybe you're in a bedroom. Bedrooms haven't changed much. It's hard to know. I'm sure there's going to be some other way to consume this kind of media that we can't imagine yet. Obviously, always you have futurists who have vague guesses, and maybe one of them is right. But I think like a lot of times these guesses will just be like, well, everything's going to be virtual reality and everything's going to be augmented reality. And you're not going to have 2D file systems, you're going to have 3D file systems. But that's, to me, the flaw in that thinking is that not everything works better by adding, at some level, some mechanisms work best, still to this day, work best with the technology that has existed for, since the Industrial Revolution or even before. So I think just to say that, well, you're not going to have a 2D monitor, you're going to be in a 3D space like Minority Report, which, to be fair, decent movie based on one of my favorite short story by one of my favorite authors. I just don't think you can just blanket apply that kind of thinking to everything. But it is interesting to look at and think about the things that futurists and sci-fi authors and think tanks hired by films to sort of imagine what these futures might look like, the stuff that they got right and the stuff that they got wrong, the types of things that they got right and the types of things that they got wrong. It seems like there was a pattern, and the pattern was that they got a lot of the small things right and a lot of the big things wrong. So for channels and paradigms and things that already existed in their times, they were really good at extrapolating those things out. But they couldn't predict giant cultural or just giant paradigm shifts of any kind. Some of these junctures, you can only go one way, you go that way. We didn't even know what the juncture was going to be, much less the choice that would be made at that juncture. Like Star Trek. Star Trek had the iPad and the iPhone basically physically designed, and the idea designed in the 60s. Sci-fi books had it before then. But yet Star Trek couldn't get past the idea of the analog carrier signal, right? Like the digital carrier signal, that they couldn't get it. There have been hits and misses, and misses are, like I said, some of them would have been impossible to predict without, if you've ever read Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, the psychohistorian Harry Seldon, he invented this art called psychohistory, which was basically like if you have enough data from enough people doing enough things, you can predict the future. So without something like that, like we couldn't have anticipated some of these junctural massive changes. Like we could not anticipate the fact that there was going to be a massive cultural shift that steered us away from space exploration during the space race. I mean, after the moon landing, we extrapolated like with pretty good odds that we were going to be on Mars by the year 2000. And, hey, there were some of those moons, some of Saturn or Jupiter's moons look like they might be habitable or, terraformable. When I was a kid, the conventional wisdom was, maybe we'd be on Mars by like 2010 at the latest. And now at this point, who knows if it's ever going to happen? Like our priorities have shifted. So stuff like that wasn't really, it's impossible to predict. Maybe not impossible, and maybe you're watching or listening to this right now on Mars. In which case, congratulations, we finally made it. 2086, the first humans reached Mars, and they got YouTube in 2088. Or maybe it's the 30th century and we still haven't done it. Maybe we're never going to do it. Here's a grim thought. Maybe we never reach our full potential as a species. And I know there are a lot of people who would say, well, going to Mars is not a hallmark of whether or not a species survives or succeeds or fails. But I just spoiled myself there. And again, this is just the thinking now, but eventually, if we want to survive, we're going to have to leave Earth. So, and I want to do a time check here. Okay. There's something reassuring about the march of progress going hand in hand with the march of time. But we don't have enough evidence to say that that's the case with any certainty. We're working off a very tiny amount of data. There is not enough information for us to say that humankind progresses through technology like in this linear, sort of singular, ladder-like fashion, always either going up or plateauing, but never reverting it. In fact, I mean, there's evidence to the contrary. The burning of the Library of Alexandria, lost knowledge from the Mayan culture, the entire Dark Ages, any number of fascist regimes waging war against the advanced of enlightened and therefore more difficult to shackle thought or thinkers. A nuclear holocaust would be a really good way to send us back to square one. So maybe my assertion that YouTube would still be around in 1,000 years is silly, not because we will have progressed beyond that, but because we will have reverted to an earlier, to a level of knowledge way below it. Maybe its equivalent will be discovered again in another millennium, maybe lost again, discovered again. Who knows? Maybe it happens in a cyclical fashion. But either way, this video will then be lost to time. There's just no telling. And on one hand, it's hard to imagine that to be the case because we, compared to, 1,000 years ago or even 100 years ago, the proliferation of information is just huge compared to what we used to have, right? And the informational losses that we suffered in earlier times, e.g. the library in Alexandria, that just wouldn't have mattered if it happened now because we don't have that kind of cloistered knowledge. It's spread everywhere. It's, Lord help me for saying in the cloud. But, before we had these little pockets of enlightenment, like the Mayan civilization, and, they get snuffed out and then lots of information is lost. But even that could just be a matter of perspective because when you get right down to it, we've still put all our eggs in the basket that is Earth. So if it fails, poof, it's just a larger scale, but, and there's still a single point of failure. It's just a larger point. The future is frustrating. How do you manage to live in it? Here's a non sequitur. I recently sort of noticed this gradual shift in my life from where I found evenings and sleeping very stifling, and I found mornings very invigorating and exciting. And I don't know exactly when it happened. It happened over a fairly long period of time, but that's flipped for me now. I look forward to going to bed, and when I wake up in the morning, it's usually sort of with some, even if I'm excited about what's happening that day, there's still some small sense of dread, and maybe that's my brain gradually preparing me to be more accepting of the inevitable. Because I don't want to die, so here's another message in that bottle being thrown into the ocean. if there's a way to bring me back to life in your era, just do it. Do it. Don't think about it. I'll pay you 6 million gleebles, whatever the international intergalactic currency is. If there's a way to reconstitute my consciousness from a sample of my DNA, do it. I don't care about the continuity of existence. I don't care about messing with things we don't understand. I don't care about flouting the natural order. I'm like Roy Batty. I just want more life. Even if it means I'm like a head in a jar, I'll take whatever I can get. I promise if that happens, I'll make a follow-up video to this one. Don't hold your breath for that. So really the last thing I'd like to know is basically on what people are anticipating now. The real question is, how did artificial intelligence end up taking over the world? Like, which sci-fi author or philosopher or futurist got closest to the truth? I would love to be able to know that information, not so I could stop it, because that's inevitable, but I just want to know, I want to tell my kids who they need to start sucking up to, so maybe they get a place at the right hand of the cyborg who leads us. There are lots of tropes about AI destroying humanity that are around in my time and before my time, in sort of mid to late 20th century. The science fiction of Vonnegut, Heinlein, Philip K. Dick, Arthur C. Clarke, Douglas Adams, films of Ridley Scott, John Carpenter, James Cameron, and all that stuff was pretty formative for me, being an American suburbanite. The usual story was sort of a retelling of the story of the myth of Prometheus. Not the movie Prometheus, although that also was a retelling of the story of the myth of Prometheus, probably how it got its name, wherein humankind stumbles upon or is bestowed by aliens some new way of controlling or creating life, and then they proceed to screw it up with sort of Pierian spring predictability, and the result is usually some level of catastrophe on a scale from 1, which is better hire a hard-boiled detective to wipe out the remnants of the threat, to 10, all of humanity loses in a full-scale war with these AI constructs, and the AI construct sees humanity's continued existence as a threat. Some of those older stories seem remarkably relevant right now. If you haven't read Player Piano by Kurt Vonnegut, it was written in 1952, and it's about the blue-collar workers of America being put out of work by AI constructs and machines. The wealth is not distributed among the workers, of course. The wealth is kept by the elite, leading to a even greater than already existed since, capitalism, wealth disparity between the rich and the poor, and eventually leading to open rebellion. What's rough about a lot of these stories is when I was a kid, and I read these stories, there was an element of horror to them, of course, but that horror was kind of offset by the wondrous things that came along with them. So, on one hand, robots took over the world. On the other hand, we had interstellar space flight. We had an intergalactic presence. We had these handheld devices that cured every disease known to man. And it's looking like we're going to end up getting, a lot of the bad, not as much of the good. Hopefully we can focus on writing that. But that's the way it seems to be heading. But you would know better than I do. I mean, even if you're watching this video tomorrow and I'm still alive, you have a better idea of where society is going than anybody watching this video has a better idea of where society is going than I do, because de facto you're living further in the future than I am, because nobody's seen this video live. So if that ends up being the case, if it turns out the AI uprising destroys human civilization as we know it, and if for some reason your machine learning overlords manage to wipe out all knowledge of how humanity can stop it, except for this video, if they miss this video, good news. I'm here to save you all, because the solution is always the same. So listen closely. You're going to want to find a way to access the input to the central master AI processor. Right now that sounds stupid. It seems like in such a complex system, there wouldn't be a single master controller. When we were talking about institutionalized knowledge, and yet there always seems to be one in every representation. Obviously, I'm operating under the assumption that somebody got it right. I mean, it could be like bundles of cables that are just exposed for no reason. It might look like a fuse box, or it could be like something that you can't even recognize. You don't even recognize it as an input, right? Maybe it's just these points of light forming a sphere, sort of rotating in around other points of light. Just some weird abstraction that's just, freaky and indescribable. But so find that input. There's going to be somebody who knows where it is. Like there's going to be a person you can ask who's going to have this knowledge, right? Be nice to that person, because the trope also generally dictates that that person dies shortly after bestowing their knowledge to you. So, thank them. And then once you get to this central master AI multi-threaded processor, all you have to do is feed it a paradox. I'm going to give you the paradox. Just you say compute. If there's a barber who shaves everyone in town, who shaves the barber? So you do that, and then you're probably going to want to run, at least take a few steps back, and what should happen is the artificial life form will make a bunch of bizarre noises. Like the noises might sound anachronistic. It might sound like a modem. That's just the result of lack of imagination. And then after a bit of this, the thing will sputter and it will say something like "does not compute." Sparks will start to fly from the CPU, and if the person didn't already die at this point that gave you that information, this is typically where that person would die. But then you're golden. Humanity's back to normal, and the Great Reconstruction, often will be called the Great Reconstruction, or similar words similar to that effect. But the Great Reconstruction will begin. Rejoice. So if this video served no other purpose, maybe there is a small sliver of a chance that thousands of years hence, it could be the vessel containing the instructions, ensuring humanity finally wins the great Borg being war, whatever it ends up being called, something with alliteration maybe. It's probably going to be some empirically stupid sounding name that only becomes acceptable because it's sort of hammered into all of our collective subconsciouses, to the point that we no longer recognize it for being ridiculous, like Metallica. And look, if that's the case, you better resurrect me. Like, that's not, don't, if I saved the world with this video, please bring me back to life. I mean, that's the least you could do. Get on it. It seemed like that was like a remote possibility a few moments ago, but now I'm convincing that's one of my coping mechanisms. I think I'm convincing myself that that is what's going to happen. This video will one day save the universe, and to pay me back, you will resurrect me. So, and if the technology doesn't exist yet for you to resurrect me, get on that. Just start. Do something. You can get there real quick with the help of artificial intelligence. Forget it. Just enjoy your future. My atoms are in the mix there somewhere. It's possible that you're breathing in a little bit of me right now. Maybe some of the energy that I radiated is powering your future version of a coffee maker. Maybe some of the trace silicon in my body will be in the device that you're watching this on. It's making some pretty big assumptions there. I'm assuming that your device uses silicon. I mean, I'm never going to know, but I do know that eventually these atoms, or the energy generated by these atoms, will, at some point in the grand future history of our universe, will intermingle with your atoms, or the energy radiated by your atoms. And I look forward to that dance.